Good afternoon, Antonio.
Hi, good afternoon.
So we're doing something a little bit different for one of our Cavell shows. We've decided to invite Antonio, who's our Director of Engineering, and actually has to make all these nice services the marketers come up with and all this fancy technology actually work in the customer environment and the account-specific environment. So he's going to share our experience from making this stuff work in large enterprises. I'll hand it over to you, Antonio.
Thank you, Gail. Hello, everybody. My name is Antonio Sardinha. As Gail already said, I'm the Director of Engineering Services here at Cavell. I've been with Cavell for 14 years now, and over the last 14 years, we've worked on a number of customer networks, usually assisting vendors and service providers with network transformation. Over the last 4 to 5 years, as the market's been shifting to SD-WAN, we got involved with several SD-WAN projects, and I am here today to talk a little bit about what we have done and what we have learned. So to set a little bit of context, we have worked in over 25 different customer networks. And although that might not sound like a big number, 6 of these customer networks are actually Fortune 500 customers. So we're talking about large enterprise with international footprint, complex network environments. They span across 9 different vertical markets, and we deliver our services and assisted in a number of functions all the way from pre-sales to post-sales. In these 25 customers as of today, we probably migrated around 1,500 sites. And I'm talking about sites which are complex, where we actually had to go in and design and define migration plans to actually be able to migrate this into SD-WAN. And additionally to that, we have trained around 600 engineers, either through instructor-led training courses, through customized training delivered for network operations. And of course, we've done a number of knowledge transfer sessions through the last years. So delivering this, that allows us to understand the SD-WAN technologies relatively well. We work with several vendors. By several vendors, I mean 3-4 vendors, where we have more experience, where we've done a lot of work. And today, I want to talk to you a little bit about the things that we have learned. So I'll start by saying that it's been quite a journey, because 6-7 years ago, 10 years ago, when we walked into a meeting to talk about network transformation, the discussion was about, how can I get more bandwidth? How can I get less cost? And that was basically the discussion around the wide area network. And of course, the service providers have their unique value offer. Additional to offering the service, there's the service rep they can do for managed WAN, how they differentiate between each other, how some of them can deliver more comprehensive services with more capabilities or less. But if you look at how the network looked like, before SD-WAN, and if you look at how the network looked like today, it is, significantly different. Because today, of course, the networks, as we've been talking for the whole session, need to provide connectivity not only into the corporate network, to the corporate data centers between the branch offices, but also into the cloud, into the SaaS services. So the wide area network changed dramatically over the last years, and SD-WAN is currently the technology that we're using to transform these networks and being able to integrate better or to deliver the services that our customers need. So the biggest difference is that when I walk into a meeting today, the discussion is not about cost reduction. To be honest, on the very beginning it was. When we started deploying SD-WAN 4 years ago, 5 years ago, the discussion would start with, MPLS service is expensive, we want to leverage internet as a transport in order to save costs. But that has completely changed. Nowadays, you go into any meeting and people are talking about cloud connectivity, multi-cloud, security, and performance management. So from my perspective, those are the topics. That's what I see. And this represents, of course, an opportunity, because to move away from the traditional managed one service that we've been doing for many years into services that deliver a lot more value to the end customer and make the service provider a lot more relevant within the IT strategy of the organization. Now, one of the reasons why I started with this slide is to make a little bit of a provocative statement, which is, through my experience, what I see is that quite often the service provider comes into the customer either because he's already the incumbent, is already the one delivering the wide area network services, the managed one, or maybe because it's an RFP and they want to come in and the RFP is packaged with a solution with SD-WAN and transport. But what I see quite often is the service provider coming in with the vendor, and with the service provider being in the meeting more to maintain the existing one service or to propose the transport service, but not adding a lot of value into the SD-WAN context. So yeah, they bring the vendor will come in, will demonstrate and show, okay, these are my product capabilities, this is what this new technology can do for you. But I feel, or I miss a lot, the same type of approach we used to have with managed one, where the service provider will come in, say, okay, yes, this is a technology, but now we can put this service wrap around it. This is how we differentiate ourselves. This is why you should buy this service from us. So something to keep in mind, of course, technology is great, and most of the customers can actually get the technology through several channels in order to differentiate yourself. The way how you integrate this technology, the way how you manage this technology can make a huge difference as you're proposing something to your customer. And that ties to the second topic, and this is supposed to be a lesson learned. So one of the things that I've learned is that with SD-WAN, it's very important to go beyond what, as a managed one service we traditionally do. So it's no longer obviously enough to know, okay, what is the list of sites, what is the required bandwidth, and what are the SLAs that you need. Now it's much more important to actually understand what is the IT strategy of the organization, of your customer. Why are they looking into adopting SD-WAN? Well, it's not only because of a technology refresh. I mean, they will tell you it's because of cloud integration, but you have to know more. Which are the driving factors for this technology change? Because unless you understand why this is really important for the customer, how is it enabling them to achieve certain objectives, it will be very hard to understand later on as you're positioning your product, your services, features, and capabilities. It will be very hard to understand what is important, what is not. And then it will be very easy to get yourself into, situations where you have a huge discussion, a huge problem, because the product you're proposing does not have a specific feature, because the customer told you that this feature is required. And quite often, yes, the feature is nice to have, but it's not strategic, right? So very important to understand the customer IT strategy, why they're adopting SD-WAN, what are the driving factors behind this decision, in order to be able to understand which features, functionalities, and capabilities are important and should be you should focus on. In order to do that, it's simple. I mean, sometimes these things might look very complex, but they're not, because in order to do that, all you need to do in most cases is to expand and go beyond what you traditionally do. So usually, as a managed one, as a service provider, you'll be talking to some kind of organization within your customer that handles infrastructure, that handles projects. And it's very important to go beyond that and try to get involved, let's say, with the architecture management office, get more visibility of why things are being done, how does this new technology will enable the organization to achieve their goals through their IT strategy. So all I'm trying to say, understand why your customer is adopting the technology so that you can later on position the features and capabilities of the product you're proposing according to that. because otherwise it will be very hard to meet all the requirements that your customer might have for you. So, you understood what your customer is looking for. You chose your technology partner, the vendor that can deliver that functionality, and then you go into the customer. And this type of project, especially on large enterprise, usually goes through phases. The sales cycle used to be longer than it is right now. It's shortening, but it still usually involves some kind of lab POC environment where you're able to demonstrate not only the product capabilities, but also the service wrap you can put around it, how you will manage it, how will you implement it, and then usually goes into a pilot where you actually deploy a number of sites. And what I would like to highlight here is that the design phase is critical. So before you even start the lab or the POC, you understand what your customer is looking for, but you need to understand also a little bit about your customer network. It's quite often I get involved in projects at a later stage, maybe because they're going wrong, and we find out that a lab or a POC has already been built and the product capabilities haven't been demonstrated. But well, guess what? Whatever was built is not representative of the customer network. So building a lab and the POC should not be only about demonstrating the technology capabilities, but it's a great opportunity to actually learn about the customer, which applications are important for them, how does the network looks like, and what problems do they have today that your solution can help fix. And by doing this, you will be able not only to demonstrate the product capabilities and the solution design, but also how this can help them solve their problems. And it also allows you to demonstrate that you have the capability to do this, that you as a service provider know about this technology, understand your customer very well, and are positioning a solution which is fit for them. As an example, in lab environments, whenever possible, or in POCs, when they are done on premise, I always try as much as I can to convince the customer to connect the POC environment into the production network so that we can test the applications, so that we can test whatever we're doing with the customer applications. We take a laptop or whatever into the test environment and we connect into the business applications. Maybe we have a one emulator and you can simulate adverse network conditions and demonstrate how, when a user is working from a location that does not have, fast connectivity or good broadband, good connectivity, maybe it's connecting via satellite or VSAT or 4G, and that, the capabilities that the SD-WAN solution brings in, maybe it has one optimization, maybe it has forward error control, packet duplication, and how these technologies can help achieve what you are trying to do. So POC is very important, not only to demonstrate what your product can do or what your offer can deliver, but also to learn about the customer and, taking into consideration what is important for the customer, focusing on that and showing how you can achieve it. Okay, so pilot lab is successful, POC is done, the customer wants to move on, you go into pilot. And quite often, people, especially, I've seen this happening a lot of times, that we go into pilot without being properly prepared. So quite often, the sites are chosen because they have IT staff to support with the testing. And then you end up with, this equipment deployed in sites, let's say in major cities, where connectivity is not an issue, where latency is not an issue, where you cannot really demonstrate the benefits and that the product can deliver for your organization. So, of course, choose your sites very carefully based on what the customer is trying to achieve. If the customer is trying to address the problem that the current network does not have enough capacity, that they need more bandwidth, they're leveraging the use of the internet, and the internet is not as good service as you get out of MPLS. Well, not as good as much. It means it does not have SLAs, So maybe, of course, choosing a site where bandwidth is not available, that you're basically connecting out of a 4G or basically where you are connecting over a DSL line, might be a much better fit. The second thing, very important, make sure the operations team is ready to onboard the technology. I cannot enforce this enough because I see this mistake being done again and again, which is, oh, well, we've done our pilot, we're ready to go on board the technology. So yeah, let's just schedule a few knowledge transfer sessions with the operations team so that they can onboard the technology. And then you expect the operations team to be able to handle it. Well, what happens is technology is deployed for whatever reason, there's a problem a few days later, the NOC cannot solve the problem. So they need to rely on the vendor, and that will delay the resolution of the problem. So you get brand new technology, and basically now you have users complaining, and it will affect the execution of your pilot, the outcomes and the results, because you experienced problems that maybe could have easily been prevented, if the operations team had been properly trained and would be ready to onboard the technology and operate the platform. And then the last thing about the pilot is always make sure that the benefits you're delivering for the customer are measurable. And sometimes this might require having some additional tools into your pilot. So as an example, if the discussion, which quite often is around performance improvement, of course, you have to make sure that you have the required tools to demonstrate that performance improvement. Okay, maybe you need tooling that will allow you to monitor the, application launch times, the web page load time, so that you can clearly demonstrate before and after this technology, so the customer can clearly understand there is a productivity benefit by deploying this technology into my branch offices. So it's not good enough to say, oh, the network looks to be much faster. That's not good enough, right? So have the right tools, make sure that whenever you do the pilot, that you can clearly demonstrate that the customer is getting the benefit. So if you do this, of course, you'll be in a much better position to go into further discussions. So I already mentioned this before, that when it comes to software-defined networks, the design is the key. Why? Because unlike traditional networks, where the majority of the effort in order to build the infrastructure is in the build phase, with software-defined networks, it's on the plan and design phase. Why? Because, well, you'll be understanding all the different connectivity types and on the different templates you'll need to create. You'll be testing everything in advance. And then you'll be deploying all your configuration in your controller or in your let's call it orchestrator. It's orchestrator directed, depending on the terminology of the vendor. But you'll be creating your entire network, and then you'll be shipping all your appliances to site to migrate the service. But what happens quite often is, of course, that networks are complex, and the migration from the traditional network technology, let's call it legacy, into your new SD-WAN network requires a transition phase. So it's very important to plan everything very well, because this migration sometimes can be complex. It's not a greenfield scenario. If you go and deploy SD-WAN into a brand new company, this would be easy. But because you have to migrate from the traditional technology, and you'll not be able to do all the sites at once, you'll have this migration phase, or this transient status. Part of your network is already migrated to SD-WAN, the rest of the network not migrated to SD-WAN. So doing a proper design for the migration, make sure that you test everything very well before you move on during the pilot, and then executing very fast so that you minimize the time that you spend on this transient phase. So the rest is pretty much straightforward, right? Based on what I discussed before. Make sure that you know your customer requirements. Don't lose sight of the priorities. During implementation, you always have a lot of change. Customers have new requirements. The product, the vendor release new features and capabilities that the customer wants to use. All this requires appropriate governance. The majority of the problems I had during migration phase is because this change has not been managed effectively, and that resulted in problems because new features were activated new requirements came in that suddenly needed changes to the way how we were implementing things. And final thing about SD-WAN, it's really easy to build, it's really easy to operate, but it comes at well, I won't say it comes at a cost, but it's not a cost. It comes with a risk, which is you have a centralized control plane that manages your entire infrastructure. If you do not have proper change control, role-based access control into your orchestrator, it's very, very easy to make a change that shuts down your entire network or that affects your entire network. So very important on SD-WAN to make sure that it's not only about the technology, it's also about the operation. Make sure that all processes and everything you have around the operation of your network is properly thought of before you go live, because I've seen this happening multiple times where someone wants to change a simple policy and suddenly affects the connectivity across the entire enterprise on the click of a button.
Great. Thank you, Antonio.
Thank you, Gail. So
that's why you have some sleepless nights every once in a while, huh?
Absolutely.
Or early morning. Thanks for that. And audience, you'll see that the networking session is open. This is a chance for you to speed date. If you want to, you go in the session and you click the button and you'll be matched with someone. Or you, of course, can go to the people section and directly message someone. And the booths are also open, so please take this opportunity to network. We'll be back on stage. We'll be back in sessions, so you have to learn the new buttons at 3:35 or 4:35 Central European Time. Look forward to seeing you and seeing you in the networking areas.